What's up, everybody? This is the Booch, and welcome to episode 2 of the Boochcast covers the Darkside of the Ring. This week we are discussing the Montreal Screw Job, one of the biggest moments in wrestling history. And of course, joining me for this, I have the one and only singer-songwriter, AEW correspondent Desmond Dagenhart is here. My NXT correspondent, the one and only Mr. John Tumblin, joining us for this great moment with the Montreal Screw Job. And I gotta tell you guys, that was one hell of an episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't understand how you take the most infamous moment in wrestling history and not make it the first episode of Darkside of the Ring.
It was intriguing. I don't know why either, but I guess they wanted to start off with something lovely. You know, I mean, Randy Savage and Elizabeth did have an interesting relationship, but we already talked about that. That's why we're here. We're here, of course, for the Montreal Screw Job, which, of course, discusses the incident between Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels and the whole thing that happened in Montreal. And of course, what I loved about this episode was it really created the magic for people who really don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of wrestling fans, we know a lot about the Montreal Screw Job. So it helped educate people who didn't get it. And it also helped educate people like us who knew what was happening but didn't know the whole story, because WWE's only going to tell you so much.
The entirety of the background to the story. And I'm really excited to generally just go over these Dark Side of the Ring episodes with you guys, because so much of this, the general public is not going to know. So it's good to watch it and discuss it with wrestling-minded people.
Absolutely.
We're definitely getting different points of view as well. I mean, it's we've all heard Bret's side of the story. We've all heard Shawn's side of the story. And everybody knows the infamous line from Vince McMahon, Bret screwed Bret.
Yeah.
But this gave us a lot of backstage information from people who never really spoke up on the incident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this was a big deal. Like I said, that's why I'm really shocked that they didn't make this episode 1.
Yeah, and so of course this whole thing kicks off. It gives the backstory, and that's what I loved about it. Like, it showed Bret the Hitman Hart and his time in Stampede Wrestling, which was run by his father, Stu Hart, who ran the Dungeon, which educated wrestlers in the real technical way to do things. Also talked about Ric Flair having waning health issues in WWE, which I didn't know about, and that was how Bret Hart. They decided Bret was the guy. He was being built up to be the top guy in the company, and he got that spot when he beat the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and that was why they decided to ultimately drop the belt. Rick dropped the belt to Bret Hart, and then it also brings in Eric Bischoff and the WCW side of things. And Eric Bischoff's allowed to talk in a way that he normally wasn't able to talk before, because the whole thing centered around the fact that Bret Hart was on his way out the door. He was going to WCW, and that was what started the whole entire thing with how they're going to take the belt off him, what are they going to do. So to have Eric Bischoff give his perspective and get confronted with things that he didn't that he did during Bret's time in WCW was great as well. And what I admire most about this is that everybody that was interviewed, they didn't back down.
No.
They gave whether you agree with them, you disagree with them, you think they're lying or telling the truth. Not one person danced around or backed away from the issue. They went full on.
Oh, yeah.
So whether you love or hate Bischoff or Russo or Cornette or anybody, you got to respect the fact they spoke their minds. I think that's a key thing we need to look at in this episode. And, of course, the big thing that was talked about on this, and I love the fact that it was brought up, was the importance of kayfabe.
The whole illusion of kayfabe was such a hard and fast rule in WWF and professional wrestling at this time. You didn't break kayfabe. You had to respect the business, and you had to abide by the rules. And I loved that in this documentary, a big theme in this episode was kayfabe, because we'll get into this much bigger later, but in terms of this, the landscape of kayfabe was changed forever because of this match.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is why, like, a lot of times you see a lot of wrestlers today, and yes, I'm going to put them on blast, that a lot of them, some of them respect kayfabe, some of them don't respect kayfabe, some of them think it's ridiculous, like, oh, everybody's in on it. That's not the point. The point of kayfabe is the fact that if we go to a wrestling match, if we go to a wrestling show, we all know it's a work. We know there's storylines. We're not stupid to that. And guess what? The people back then, not most of them, they weren't stupid to it either. They knew what they were going to see. But when you're in that moment, when you're in that match, you're supposed to make me believe in what I see in that ring.
Oh, yeah.
It's little things like, let's say there's a match. Let's say Desmond and I are going to wrestle each other in a match, and we're the big main event. The Booch versus Dagenhart. It's a big match. And we show up to the building in the same car.
Just saying, I've got a much cooler name.
You do. But you totally do. Totally do. But I'm saying, if we showed up to the building in the same car, let's say after the match, Des and I are in the back, we're celebrating, we had a great match. We go to the bar and we have a beer. If people saw us in public, we get fired immediately, no matter how much money we were drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you weren't supposed to do that. Des goes somewhere else, I go somewhere else.
We could have gone back to the locker room, did a drink together.
Yes.
It's a cheers, see you at the next show, and then we'd go our separate ways and not be seen in public together.
Because you showed the fans that respect. When you take them out of the element like that, that's why kayfabe is so important. And back then, you really took care of it, because even though, like I said, people knew it was a work, no one was wise to it yet.
No.
Fans still believed to a degree because the internet was slowly coming around.
Right.
Because in the 90s, the internet wasn't as big as it is now. It was like what's the word? Infancy.
Infancy.
Yeah, it was in its infancy. So you did not know what was going on. You still believed in what you saw, and you still made that happen. Like, that's why you never exposed the business. You never say what was going on. And that's what made this moment so great, was the fact that this was a big part of exposing the business.
Yeah.
It exposed the business in a big way, and it allowed people to see the inner workings of the business, thus changing the landscape of wrestling. That's why it's such a big deal, and why these people protected it, and why they were so angry when it was broken.
They really, really did an amazing job back then of protecting kayfabe for the most part. I mean, even with all the antics back then of Stone Cold, and whenever, Stone Cold, The Rock, everybody coming up to that, I mean, kayfabe was more or less pretty protected. It wasn't until, well, the Montreal Screw Job that, the curtain got pulled behind us.
You said The Rock, but The Rock didn't become The Rock until well after this.
I meant like, you know what I mean.
He's talking about the era.
The era, yeah. The era, yeah.
The Rock was there, but he was not there yet.
I know, you know what I mean.
He was barely Rocky Maivia.
He was
point.
exactly. It was. What I meant by that was like he was still in. It was still in the same time frame as when this happened. Right. That's what I meant. Yeah.
And then, of course, what also made this so amazing was the fact that, and obviously this has happened before in wrestling, but never on this level, was Bret and Shawn were two guys who hate each other in the ring and hate each other outside the ring.
Yes, they did.
Like this, there were times where it got personal between them.
Right. Something that was really cool here is when you listen to it, when they first started feuding against each other, they had so much respect for each other right off the bat, because they had such great chemistry in the ring. They were really good at working together, and then all of a sudden, then it just got to a point where Shawn, being his young and prickish self, as everybody knows, like, look, I love Shawn Michaels as much as the next guy, but even The Undertaker says the kid was a prick.
Oh, he was an asshole. And it makes me laugh, because everybody talks about, like, all these top guys in the business who are, this guy's insecure, this guy never wants to do a job, this guy never puts that guy over. People don't realize Shawn was that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Shawn, it was a lot. It wasn't just Bret. There were times we were supposed to put over Davey Boy. He wouldn't put over Davey Boy. They tried to bury Owen. They tried to bury so many different people in that time frame. Shawn was an asshole. He was all about Shawn, and he just cared about himself. Like, that is a guy who, when he went out to the ring, he would do business, but you would have to, like, drag him kicking and screaming to do the business. Like, him and Vince would have to sit in an office for hours arguing, and it wasn't until Vince finally put his foot down and said, Shawn, you're doing this. Then Shawn would finally go, fine, whatever. And he'd storm out of the locker room like a little child, but he would go out to the ring and do what he was told to do. And
like a little child.
Yeah, and then of course, but the thing is, what made this so personal was the back and forth stuff. Like, for example, Bret Hart bringing up the fact that Shawn Michaels posed for Playgirl.
Which, in all fairness, the big thing here was Bret asked.
Yes.
He did ask. He did.
And Shawn said, yeah. So he went out there and did the Playgirl thing, which is funny because most people don't know Shawn Michaels posed for Playgirl magazine, which is the opposite of Playboy. Now, the thing is, Shawn did it because he thought since a lot of guys buy Playboy magazines, he thinks a lot of girls buy Playgirl magazine. So the chicks, man, because he's the sexy boy. He didn't realize Playgirl's biggest demographic is gay men. More gay men purchase those magazines than the girls do. I'm not saying girls don't buy porno mags, but I'm saying the gay guys buy them more. So when he did that, people were speculating about whether or not Shawn Michaels was gay for years. And that's why, and of course the clique always gave him shit over it.
Oh yeah.
Triple H, even his Hall of Fame induction speech, said, Shawn had a lot of great moments. The Hell in a Cell, stealing the show at WrestleMania, but who could forget Playgirl? And then he'd be like, and then he'd imitate Shawn going, Hunter, the chicks are gonna love it. And then he'd wink at the camera. Shawn's in the back going, you before he goes out there to give his speech. So they give him shit about it to this day because it's funny. Because we all know Shawn isn't gay. He's married. He's got kids. He's straight like a freeway. But then, of course, Shawn responded with the whole Sunny Days argument. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason that was such a big deal was because Sunny in those days, Tammy Sitch, was known for being a girl who slept around the locker room, which I don't care about, because it's not my problem. But the thing is, Sunny was actually having an affair with Shawn Michaels for a long time. And Shawn thought because Tammy and Brett were such good friends, because Tammy was close with the Hart family. They were all good friends. She thought that Brett and Tammy were sleeping together, which, obviously, since everybody knew about Sunny and Shawn, when he makes an accusation like that about Brett, now Brett's got to call his wife and explain that I didn't do this. Shawn's being a prick. And
the big thing here was that Shawn didn't ask Brett first. If he just said, "Hey, I want to make a shot right here. You might want to talk to your wife before I make this shot."
Yeah,
then it would have been a completely different situation.
Yeah, everybody does that. And the key thing is, I'll give another example. And this is more in the modern era. When Cena and Bray Wyatt had a feud. One point, Bray Wyatt was talking about John Cena and how, he's the top guy in the company. He goes, you live in this mansion with your plastic girlfriend, insinuating Nikki Bella and her fake tits. Mm-hmm. Nikki said later in a podcast, Bray Wyatt came to her and said, hey, I want to use this line. Are you cool with this? Yeah. She said yes, and he went up and did it. So he got permission first, which is what you're supposed to do. And then, of course, this led to the bathroom fight between them because Brett confronts Shawn. They're fighting. They get into a big fight. Brett pulls out huge locks of Shawn's hair as they're scuffling.
And, when Shawn Michaels storms into Vince McMahon's office, he says, this is an unsafe work environment. My friend, you realize at this point you're in the WWF. Your job is actually to go out there and, it's all work at the end of the day. But at the same time, how many people get hurt on a daily basis in the wrestling industry?
A lot.
A lot. So if you want to talk about a unsafe work environment, you're not going to file papers. Essentially,
If he had a problem, all he would have to do, it wouldn't be a going to Vince thing. If he really had a problem, file an assault charge.
Yeah,
exactly. And of course, the case would get thrown out because it's wrestling. They would throw the case right out. Like you got beat up at a wrestling event where y'all are paid to pretend to beat each other up. Yes, case dismissed. I ain't dealing with it. It's not gonna happen.
And Vinny, do you know who would be the judge of that court? Whoever the current King of the Ring is.
I think at that time,
whoever won King of the Ring is the king of the court.
96.
96, yeah, then it was Stone Cold, because Triple H won it the following year. Because if it happened closer to the Survivor Series, it would have been Triple H. Because Triple H won the King of the Ring the following year.
Can you imagine, really quickly, everybody, can you imagine a wrestling court with Judge Stone Cold?
Oh, hell yeah!
Yes,
Where is that?
Y'all are going to fight it out again, this time with everybody watching, and that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
Bang, bang! The gavel
it's like, and then Bret Hart comes in, and he's like, wait. Your Honor, may I approach the bench? Yeah. Drops a 12-pack on the table. I rule in favor of Bret Hart. Yeah. Just dropped a 12-pack on the stage. That would have been great. And then, of course, the big thing that was going on here was at first, WCW's trying to get Bret to leave.
Yep.
Trying to get him to leave because he's got, they're offering him millions of dollars, like $2 million, $3 million, which is a lot of money at that time. And also, but Bret ultimately signs $1.5 million, and then he says, because Bret was willing to pick loyalty over money.
Yeah.
But the problem is, during this time, not only was the personal shit with Shawn starting to get big, but the ratings were going down. Because this was during the 83 weeks, when you see that little thing on Eric Bischoff's shirt, that's the title of his podcast, because that was how many weeks in a row WCW beat the WWF, the WWE, before the tide turned.
It was one of those deals where this is the situation. They're looking at Brett like he's the biggest star in the world right now, and he's got the world title, and we want him. It was that simple. It's like we got the money to back him. We want him. And then Vince is like, I want him too. So he offers him the money, and then the money's not coming in. And he doesn't have the money to give it to them.
And here's the thing about Vince. And people forget this is the kind of guy Vince was. Vince is telling Brett, I want to fulfill this obligation, but I can't. I don't have the money. So he even tells him. They didn't mention this, but he tells him. I know Bruce Pritchard mentioned this. He said, look, Brett, if they're going to offer you more money, go get the money.
Yeah.
I can't keep you here. If you need to make the more money, go. This door will be open for you when you come back. That was before all this Montreal shit happened. That was the initial thing. He was telling Brett. So they already know he's leaving for WCW. And it was strictly business. It had nothing to do with personal. Brett wasn't saying anything personal to Vince. Vince wasn't saying anything personal to Brett. This is a business thing. I understand you got to go make more money. I wish I could keep you here, but I'd have to pay you less money, and Brett ain't going to do that. So it understood perfectly. And then, so now the plan is to drop the belt to Shawn at Survivor Series. We're going to do this, make this happen. And then, that's when everything unfolds at this point. You know, Brett basically goes to Shawn and says, hey, I'm going to take care of you in that ring. I appreciate everything. He's saying all this stuff. And then Shawn said, I would never put you over. And that's what changed Brett's whole opinion.
Yeah, that was a big deal. If he'd have just said, thank you, I appreciate that. I really do, and shook his hand and went on, they might have ended it. It would have been great. But what it ends up going to is Brett just couldn't do it anymore. It was too much disrespect. Shawn was disrespecting him, and he was disrespecting the business at the same time. And it was just too much for considering that Brett was raised in this industry. And he had nothing but respect for the company, the business itself, and the title that he held in his hands. And it just got to a point where he's like, well, if you're not going to respect me and you're not going to respect the company, then why should I drop the title to you?
But with that being said, the original plan for this finish was for a disqualification by interference.
Well, that's what they planned
very initially.
Right.
And of course, we all know the outcome of what happened here. But let me say, I really don't understand here why Bret Hart even had any issue with just dropping the belt. Like, he knew that's what he's supposed to do, right, man.
Here's the thing is, if it was somebody who respected him, if it was Taker, if it was anybody
else... It doesn't
else,
matter if you respect...
Matter.
It doesn't, though. It does not matter, because if Bret Hart was such a respectable... he's entrenched in wrestling history and all of that he learned with his dad. If that's the case, then Bret was first to know that when you leave a promotion and go to another one, you drop the belt. Just do your job, man.
But until Shawn said what he said, he was going to do it.
Well, then...
But at the end of the day, Vince decides who the champion is going to be.
You're right.
He is the guy. And it's based on... And this thing about the world title people need to understand. It's not based on who the best wrestler in the world is. That's in the kayfabe world.
Yep.
Who the best wrestler in the world is. What it's about is, if you want to find out who the best worker is, find out who the Intercontinental Champion is. Because that's what that belt was for. It's designed for the worker. The world champion was the guy who could also draw the most money for the company. Who is the guy that the fans are going to pay money to see? For a period of time, it was Bret. But after a certain point, Bret was not drawing in the money. Like Vince said, the money wasn't coming in. So when the money wasn't coming in, it's because Bret wasn't drawing it. Bret was not drawing it.
Bret. Let's be realistic here. It wasn't Bret that was the problem. It was WCW.
But also Bret. But at the end of the day, Bret holds the responsibility because he's a champion. And even Bret would put that responsibility on himself if he loves the business as much as he says he does. The champion has that responsibility. You are the guy that's paying money to see. So you at least get a chunk of the blame. It's not entirely your fault, but a good chunk of it is. You get the bulk of the blame because you're the top of the tard. And that's what they wanted to do, ultimately, was have him drop the belt to Shawn. But then what happened was, after that incident, Bret decided not to do it. So the whole thing became about, how do we pitch multiple options? Or Vince was coming in with ideas for Brett shooting them all down. Shawn Michaels coming in shooting them all down. Jake Roberts even said one time, he actually watched Vince sit on a phone for 2 hours trying to talk both of them into an idea or an angle. Jake Roberts was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'd have fired both them bastards. Why is Vince wasting his time? Then there was another moment Bruce Pritchard talked about where at one point, up to the midnight hour, there was talk of bringing Hogan in and having Hogan come in and take the belt. There was going to be something where, maybe they were going to have either a triple threat match where Hogan shows up and takes the belt. Then maybe either he dropped it to Shawn at the Rumble, or they were going to carry Hogan all the way to Mania and have him drop it to Steve Austin there. And have Hogan versus Austin, which is the match we've all been, every wrestling fan in the world's wanted to see that. Maybe not him, but a lot of wrestling fans around the world, except for this guy, would have loved to have seen that. It was a money-making match.
I'm not a fan of watching Hogan in the ring. Never have been.
That's fine, but that I'm speaking for the general public.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. So there were all these multiple ideas, and they kept shooting them all down. So Vince is like, I don't know what to do. It's like he's stuck because both these guys were being at this point. Both of them are being babies at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
Because none of them are coming up with an idea. Shawn was a baby from day one-ish. Mm-hmm. Brett started being a baby when it got close to the time, and he just was not agreeing to anything.
Now, I mean, the only thing that he really suggested was for him to be able to drop the title the next day without a loss.
Yeah, he wanted to surrender the title the next night on Raw, and I love Cornette's phrase, why don't you just let him piss in your mouth?
Okay, look, and on that point of Bret Hart retaining at Survivor Series, and then the next night on Raw, basically relinquishing the title. Okay. We did that in WWE in modern time. Her name was Asuka in NXT.
Yeah.
She went, I believe it was 400 or 500 days consecutively owning that women's title. I actually saw a thing on this on Reddit a few days ago about the list of champions and how many days, and Asuka's up there. She has double the defenses of any other women's champion in NXT, and only one reign, and it's 503 days or some nonsense. And if you want a clear indication of how that wasn't the right decision, Asuka did this.
Who was the NXT champion when Paige dropped the women's title?
When Paige,
because Paige did it too, and
But that was a different scenario.
It was she was
getting called up to the roster, and they said a storyline because you're going to the roster to surrender the title, and they had a tournament to crown the champion. Plus, Paige was the first champion, and NXT was barely even on TV, so nobody even knew or cared that she had the belts. But Charlotte pretty much was it because she won the title in that tournament, and they pretty much put the record on Charlotte. NXT was not on TV back then.
No, but so back in NXT, Asuka, she defended the last time. She got called up to Raw. But the next episode of NXT, she relinquished it. We did not get a legitimate NXT Women's Champion that anybody gave a crap about until Shayna Baszler, and that was at least a year later.
I give that more credit to the quality of the women's wrestlers in NXT than I do to the title being dropped that way.
But it makes the NXT Women's title look like crap. But either way, I still, back to Montreal Screw Job, I still disagree that Brett's, what he wanted to do was retain and then relinquish it, was wrong. So something had to be done about it, and it was done behind the scenes.
Yeah, and they just wanted to, but it was still stupid that they wanted to just drop the belt and walk away. Like, that's not realistic. That's not a wrestling scenario that should be played.
No.
Well, in all fairness, what other combat sports are there? Think about it. We got boxing.
MMA.
MMA.
Yeah.
If their champion just decides nobody's beating me, they walk away. They crown a new champion. It happens in combat sports all the time. So if WWE is supposed to emulate a actual combat sport, they have to agree to the fact that sometimes they're going to have a champion that's just not going to be beat.
Well, as Vince McMahon and everyone in WWE says, sports entertainment.
And it's the time-honored tradition.
Yeah.
Like, this is a thing that's happened in wrestling since the beginning. When you're leaving the territory, you drop the belt to the next guy that they want to put over. And that was how it's supposed to be. And then the big thing, and then of course, we get to the screw job. We get to Montreal. We have the match. It's supposed to be a DQ, but instead they put him in the sharpshooter and they ring the bell.
Instant bell ring.
Instant bell ring. Bret Hart loses the title to Shawn. Bret is pissed off. He's in the locker room. Shawn's claiming, I knew nothing about this. Triple H saying, I knew nothing about this. Bret confronts them both. He really doesn't have anything to go by, so he's not pissed at them. He's more pissed at Vince. Vince eventually comes out there after multiple people had spoken to him. Like everybody told him, you got to go out there. And this is, again, to Vince's credit. Regardless of how you feel about him. He was willing to accept the consequences. He knew. He knew when he went in there, Bret was probably going to whoop his ass.
Yeah.
Shane said that. Bruce Pritchard said that. Everybody in the back said that. And Vince said, and Shane said this. Vince looked at him and said, he gets one free shot. He gets one free shot at me. Now, if he tries to hit me after that free shot, get him off of me. Don't let him hit me again, but he gets one shot if he wants to take it.
It only took one.
It only took one. But I'm saying after he knocked him down, if Bret tried to get on top of him and start wailing on him, then and only then were they supposed to pull him off. But he gets one. And he went out there. He explained what he did. There were a lot of fuck yous back and forth. Bret basically said, if you're still here when I get out of the shower, I'm going to whoop your ass. He goes and finishes the shower. Vince, to his credit, still fucking standing there.
Still there the whole time.
Could have left the whole time. Comes out. They do it. He ties him up. Bret fucking uppercuts him. And he goes to, and Vince is down and gets a black eye and everything else. Then he shows up, and then we cut to the next night on Raw. Vince has got the shiner right there. You can clearly see it. Didn't even put makeup on, which I love. And he basically, right there, they exposed the business.
Yep.
Not only that, Bret goes on off the record with that Michael Landsberg guy, which he interviews a ton of wrestlers off the record, by the way. You can literally type in off the record, any wrestler, someone's been interviewed by him. And they go in there and talk about it, and Bret basically tells everybody, I didn't really lose. So he's telling everybody what wrestling is, pretty much.
Yep. No, this was great though, because he's like, I didn't tap out, I didn't get pinned. He was, but the way Bret said it was a lot better than how Vince said it. Because when Vince said it, he said, Bret screwed Bret. Bret wouldn't do business. He literally said that he was literally calling it that. Bret was just saying, I didn't lose. So Bret, in my opinion, protected kayfabe better than Vince did.
I can give credit to that. I can see how that's a point, But regardless of who protected it more, they both still exposed the business. But I can agree with that. So then, of course, the big thing now is all the conspiracy theories that are coming out. Mm-hmm. Some people believe it's a work. Some people think it's a shoot. Cornette's taking credit for it. Russo's taking credit for it. I've heard Shawn Michaels and Triple H try to take credit for it. Everybody wants to take credit for coming with the Montreal Screw Job. They all say at the time, we didn't want the credit.
Nothing to do.
But years later, they all want it now. Like Cornette talks about the double cross. Mm-hmm. And he referenced the 1931, which I thought was interesting because even I didn't know about this. The Battle of the Bite, which was between Strangler Lewis and Henry DeGlante. Henry DeGlante, where they had a 2 out of 3 falls match. And in the back, his manager bites his chest. So he does a snapmare, makes it look like he bit his chest, and calls for the bell, the guy gets disqualified, and they screwed him in the middle of the ring. So apparently the double cross has been done before. So that's when Cornette just double crossed him. And of course, Russo said, just put him in the sharpshooter. And then Cornette saying, Vince Russo has no idea what a double cross is and all that stuff. And I'm like, look.
Everyone knows what double cross is.
Exactly. Look.
Everybody.
I like Cornette. And there's a lot of things he says about Vince Russo that I agree with him on. I do blame Russo for WCW getting royally screwed over in the late 90s, 2000s. Probably because I think he took what he thought what worked in WWE, thought it worked in WCW, did not know. Totally different fan bases, totally different section of the country. Because WWE was very much a northern type of company. WCW very much a southern kind of company. So there was different clashes there. I remember at one point he had a faction with like Terry Funk and a bunch of people. They called themselves the Old Age Outlaws. I'm like, are you shitting me? They even tried to have a hardcore title in WCW. It did not work. Just did not fit the mold. So I get why Cornette doesn't like Russo. There's a lot of things I agree with. But Vince Russo, even if he's not a wrestling guy, he does write. He does have a TV, some type of background. Mm-hmm. He knows what a double cross is.
He is. But at the end of the day, Vinny, was the Montreal Screw Job a work or shoot?
I strongly believe it was a shoot. Because it's something that has gone on in wrestling that is way too personal. Mm-hmm. So much went down. And a lot of people a lot of friendships were destroyed. A lot of background stuff has happened. It exposed the business in a major way, which nobody would do. And not only that, like, it even put Earl Hebner in position because they're like, is Brett going to pay your bills? You want a job or not? Like, they practically forced Earl Hebner to do what he did. There was way too much
Or at least
personal
that's
stuff
what they're telling everybody. That's the thing. That's what makes a work. It's either a shoot or the greatest work in pro wrestling history. Because of all the people that had to be involved to make it a work and to keep their mouths shut for so long. But the fact is, everybody's taking credit for it. There's nobody corroborating anybody else's story. Nobody is agreeing on any of the details. That, to me, says they're all lying and not doing it very well.
All right, Vinny. Okay, then, now, granted, this argument is going to be playing a little bit of devil's advocate by the end. So if you did watch the actual documentary, Scott Hall sort of goes over some things that some of the conspiracy theories kind of is what they have to hold their ground on. Now, Vinny, let's ask you then, or Des, Vinny, how many cameras were at that in the ring watching that match? Give me a number. How many cameras were on that ring?
Survivor Series had to be at least 10, 15.
Okay.
Yeah, to capture some major angles and stuff like
Right,
that.
at least 10 or 15.
And you also got to take in fact they have that one thing they put on that giant conveyor belt thing that goes
Well, that
around
goes over the top. Okay.
to kind of get the close-ups
So-
that they can't normally get.
So the actual screw job happens, okay? Bret Hart then is standing in the ring, gets a giant old loogie, spits it right at Vince McMahon, okay? How fast did they zoom that camera angle in on Vince McMahon's face? Instantly. As soon as that loogie hit his face, instant zoom in, hard zoom in, and he's cleaning the loogie out of his face. But then the other thing that is just almost damning to this, I think, to make it show this is a work. You have Bret Hart standing in the ring. He literally does the WCW in the ring, mouths it, and the camera is just fixated. Fixated, will not move on him. If there's 15 other camera angles, why couldn't they go to, I don't know, any other one of the other 14s? Cut to a camera in the back, put the logo, and just end the damn pay-per-view.
I could definitely...
How many things could have been done here?
I could have definitely seen them already having a camera angle on Vince and seeing the loogie. I could see that. I could believe.
Sure.
Yeah,
But the
because-
WCW, if this was not a work, they would have not had him do the WCW.
But the
There's
thing-
no way.
But it also doesn't make sense because WWE and WCW did not get along. So there's no way there was a business deal saying we're going to play your
Oh,
promotion.
absolutely not. But at the same time, whereas they didn't get along, WCW was constantly bringing up WWF. It was like, oh, don't bother watching that other show. They're going to do this, this, and this. They're giving away spoilers.
Well, that's because Raw was taped because they know some people, like Desmond, hate spoilers. So if they spoil everything, they're not going to want to watch.
Well, no, it's not only that. But you get this. You know what's happening without having to watch the show. You get to see it. But the point of the matter is, they were constantly talking about the other company, and that's actually a big part of what happened because they're like, oh, don't watch some guy named Mick Foley is going to win the title, and they're like, Mick Foley's going to win. And they swap over, and that started up the ratings war for WWF.
Big time.
So they were constantly bringing up WWF. So WWF making a slight reference to it because they know that Bret Hart's leaving, I can see it as a one-time thing.
I can see that too a little bit, but I'll be honest, like it's hard to believe it's a work though. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, but if it was a work, I refuse to believe they would keep it going this long if it was a work.
I don't know. I
feel like at this point they've told the truth on a lot of things, and plus Brett, like I said, Brett and Sean. There was a lot of personal shit between them outside the ring as well as in it, so it's hard for me to believe they would agree to any of that.
Where are you getting this idea that there was a lot of tension between them? From them. It's literally from them. It's
them
from people,
and other people
who
saw
were
it.
involved.
In the business.
People in the business. Exactly. Like I said, if it's a work, it is the greatest work in history with...
Well,
It is. If it is a work, it's definitely the greatest work. I
Well,
agree with that. But I refuse to believe if it was a work, they would not reveal it by now.
in terms of this podcast here, we have three people on this panel. Desmond, is it a work or a shoot?
I'm in the middle, but I'm definitely leaning more towards work.
It's a work. So, Vinny,
Shoot.
per the Boochcast, The Montreal Screw Job was a work. Vinny.
2 out of 3 vote. 2 out of 3 votes. So, but here's the question. Do you guys believe it was a work or a shoot? Comment below. Let us know who's right, who's wrong.
Am I just a conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
Or is that just is that just nonsense bullcrap?
All right, so that, ladies and gentlemen, will conclude episode 2, Boochcast reviews Darkside of the Ring. This is the Montreal Screw Job. Tune in next week. We're gonna have a big episode. It's gonna be we got the killing of Bruiser Brody is gonna be the next one we're gonna cover. That'll be myself, Desmond Dagenhart, Elvis Zielinski will be here for that one. So we'll be covering the killing of Bruiser Brody. Also, make sure you guys hit subscribe button, ring that bell to be notified so you never miss another episode of the Boochcast reviews Darkside of the Ring, as well as other additional Boochcast content we're going to have up here. Make sure you're following us on SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. Support the show through Patreon. We got great rewards for great patrons. You guys know the spiel by now. So, until next time, this is Vinny Bucci.
Desmond Dagenhart.
And your NXT correspondent. Yeah, you got to plug that NXT. John Tumblin. How's everybody doing?
All right, so guys, keep on
In
living
all
life.
fairness, he has to plug it because we're winning in the ratings.
True. It's true.
So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, keep on living life. Take care. We'll talk to you guys next time. And until then, you guys want to join me for this one?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Pizza, baby!